Hello, I'm Ed Fuqua, young adult librarian extraordinaire here at Woonsocket Public Library.
And I'm Miss Gabby from the Children's Department.
It's another episode of Book Talking with no books. I could have gotten books for this, but actually, this topic today is so new, there aren't even any books on it yet.
Yeah,
There'll be a lot of books on it soon.
Yeah.
I want to talk about coronavirus myths.
Whew.
It's a huge one. I know. It's not going to be an easy one either. I think we've been putting off for a little while, but the situation in America and the world is not getting any better. So we have to tackle these things head on if we're going to deal with it the way the world is.
Mm-hmm.
So why are there so many conspiracy theories surrounding coronavirus?
Because no one wants to believe it's happening.
Yeah. It's hard to wrap your head around the idea that it's happening. As I said in our previous episode, it's been so long since a deadly disease has struck America, and coronavirus isn't even that bad compared to the bubonic plague, or smallpox or measles back in the day. It's really a relatively minor disease, but apparently mankind as a whole can't even handle a minor disease these days.
It's crazy to think that it's been almost a year since it happened, Like, I feel like since Corona happened, everything just went by so fast,
Yeah. Sometimes it feels like it went fast, sometimes it feels like 10 years.
Yeah. Certain months, they had their days.
Yeah. So I looked up why conspiracy theories are popular in general. We've discussed conspiracy theories before in this show. So we can apply to coronavirus theories the same thing we apply to other conspiracy theories. Is it scientifically plausible? How many people are in on this theory? And does it even make sense that someone would want to do this? So a conspiracy theories thrive in a crisis. They're brought about by fear and anxiety, which is exactly what everybody's feeling right now. When people feel there's a lack of control in their lives, they want to believe that someone is in charge. Even if that person in charge is a megalomaniac billionaire bent on world domination, which is one of the popular theories. There's also a feeling that a big event has to have a big explanation. No one wants to hear it just happened.
No.
Well, diseases mutate sometimes. That's not a big enough theory to deal with something like coronavirus. Everyone says there has to be something more to that.
Yeah.
So the second coronavirus was identified, people started searching for how could this have happened.
Yeah.
So there are several websites with the top coronavirus myths. The first one is it's caused by the 5G network.
Really?
You hadn't heard that one?
No.
I heard that one from someone who was an acquaintance of mine, literally the day after our lockdown began here at the library. Yeah.
Wow.
Somebody come and said that to me, and it's like the 5G network, the cell phone network that Well, because 5G towers started going up around the same time that coronavirus struck. And when people saw a list of all the 5G towers, and they saw a list of the coronavirus hotspots, they laid the two maps together and they were mostly the same.
Oh, wow.
Which means absolutely nothing, though.
So you're getting somewhere.
Well, this is the explanation for it.
Yeah.
The thing is, 5G is a phone network. They want to sell you a more expensive things. You have to pay more for using your cell phone. So they put up all their new 5G towers in the largest population centers.
Yeah, like New York.
Yeah, and guess what places diseases spread the fastest?
The highest population.
Large population centers.
Yeah.
So no surprise that the two things suddenly happened and went along with each other. Several celebrities bought into the 5G thing. Then it was all over social media, and it got so bad in England they were attacking and burning 5G towers.
Really?
Which makes the phone manufacturers really gritting their teeth.
Oh.
I
feel like that's a lawsuit right there.
Yeah, well, what can you do? People are panicking.
Gosh.
So, the reality behind this is coronavirus is a virus. It is a microscopic organism, a biological thing. 5G is a phone network. It is electromagnetic waves that pass invisibly through the air. Whether or not it's good for you to have that much electromagnetic radiation passing through you is a totally different debate. Scientists have argued about that one for decades now. There's almost no technology that's been studied as thoroughly as cell phones. Since everyone has a cell phone, it seems like every scientist on Earth has studied what cell phones could or couldn't do to you.
Yeah.
And one thing they don't do is affect your immune system.
I could have told you that.
Yeah. But many people believe that it does, that it lowers your immune system, making you susceptible to all this stuff. But these people don't know is that 5G has been around for a while.
Yeah.
It's getting a huge advertising push right now, but as like a carrier wave, it's been used for years.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And there's never been like anything unusual about it.
No.
And there's certainly absolutely no way an electromagnetic wave can carry a biological entity along with it. It just doesn't happen. There's no thing in physics that would ever allow that to happen. So we can dismiss the 5G theory relatively quickly.
Debunked.
It's debunked. Now the other one is coronavirus, it's no worse than the flu.
Oh yeah, I've heard that one a lot.
That has come from many people, including people in positions of power. Unfortunately, it's just not true.
Not naming any names though.
Yeah, no names. This is not about politics. This is about science. The flu kills around 12,000 people a year,
Yeah.
which is a lot of people.
Yeah.
So far, coronavirus, as of a couple of days ago, has killed 274,000 people in a year, in less than a year.
Woo.
So 274,000 is a larger number than 12,000.
Yeah.
So any way you count the dead bodies, coronavirus is much worse than the flu. And now, as diseases go, when coronavirus first arrived, they said it had a 2 to 3% death rate. They're actually averaging that down now, so it might only have a 1% death rate. However, the flu has a 0.1% death rate, which is still significantly smaller. Every scientist who studied it comes away with pretty much the same thing.
Like it does have similar things to the flu, but I feel like it's like a flu on steroids, you know?
Yeah, because some of the symptoms are so similar to the flu, it was easy to dismiss it. And one of the bad things about coronavirus is, and this is something we'll encounter in almost all of these myths, it's a brand new disease.
Yeah.
It looks like the flu, it feels like the flu, but it's not really the flu. And so because of that, scientists are still figuring out what coronavirus does and doesn't do to your body. Some people get upset that scientists say one thing one day and something else the next day.
Yeah.
But the reason for that is they've done new studies and now they have better information than they had the previous day. And when a scientist gets new information, they have to share it. You have to toss out the old information and accept the new. But they're working on coronavirus all the time. Thousands, probably millions of scientists are working on it even as we speak. And they could find out new things about it tomorrow.
Oh my God.
So there's still a lot we don't know. Part of this will always be guesswork.
Yeah.
And we have to accept that. The alternative is to wait until the disease has been around for a while, and then we'll know, what it does and doesn't do to you. By that time, many, many people will be dead. On the average, some virologists say it can take up to 10 years to fully understand how a disease affects the body.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to wait 10 years for a vaccine.
No.
Yes, they started working on their vaccine a few weeks after coronavirus struck. So it is much worse than the flu.
Yeah.
We can debunk that one pretty easily.
Yes.
The,
Debunked.
the fourth one, and I hear this so often, it just makes me want to cry. Masks don't work. People with a totally straight face who should know better constantly say that masks really won't work to stop coronavirus. Now, the reason why they're saying this is the fact that, in a sense, it doesn't stop coronavirus. A coronavirus is microscopic. It passes right through the fabric of a mask. But if you're infected, or someone in a room with you is infected, it's not that they're like throwing off these gigantic amounts of disease at you. What happens is when you exhale, because your body is now full of coronavirus, the tiny water droplets that are invisible, every time you exhale, your breath contains water droplets, and those come out of your mouth. So when you exhale with no mask, you can feel your breath like all the way out, 3 or 4 feet in front of you.
Yeah.
And again, that's been proven in laboratory tests over and over again. You put a mask on and exhale with the same amount of lung strength, and you can't feel it any further than this. It cuts back more than half, how far those tiny little water droplets that could contain coronavirus can go. It cuts them down tremendously. So if you add masks to keeping 6 feet away from someone, that dramatically lowers 75-80% your chances of encountering coronavirus.
It doesn't stop it completely, but it stops the chances of it spreading to someone else that's close to you. And if you add in the 6 feet.
Yeah, add in the 6 feet or a barrier of any sort.
Then you should be, good. So.
Yes, working here in the public library, I wear a mask all the time when I'm not filming. And everybody who comes to the library wears a mask.
Yeah.
And Gabby and I are 6 feet apart, by the
We
way.
are.
If anyone has ever asked, we measured it before we started filming months ago.
We took rulers and just
Yes.
measured the spaces.
But people come to my desk and ask me questions. They're wearing a mask, I'm wearing a mask, and there is a sheet of plexiglass between us.
Mhm.
I feel pretty safe at this job.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Other people don't have the same option at their jobs.
Yeah.
So even if one thing all by itself isn't enough, a mask alone isn't enough. 6 foot distance without a mask also isn't enough. Because if you sneeze and you're 6 feet apart,
Yeah.
it goes all over the room every time you sneeze or cough. Yeah.
That's why you do the elbow,
Yeah, I do the elbow thing with a mask, and that could save someone's
Yeah.
life. It really, literally could.
Definitely.
Masks are far from perfect. If you have respiratory issues, it's something you need to get used to, because it doesn't actually detract from the amount of oxygen your body can take in, and that's been proven over and over again. People who have oxygen sensors attached to themselves see absolutely no drop in oxygen in their body while they're wearing a mask. It's part of a regime that you need to go through to be safe in these times that we live in. So yes, masks aren't perfect. Masks don't give you 100% protection.
But they do help.
And they help a lot.
Yes.
And anything you can do to help is better than nothing. I was reading an article just today. The state of Iowa never actually passed a law saying you had to wear a mask.
Really?
The governor decided that that he would leave it up to the individuals to decide for themselves whether they should wear a mask or not.
I feel like that's very bad leadership.
Well, currently their positivity rate on the coronavirus test is 50%.
Oh, so it's half-half.
Yeah, so half the people being tested have coronavirus in Iowa. In Rhode Island, it's hovering around like 9%,
Oh, really?
and that's considered kind of high. So Iowa's at 50%, and so far, like 200,000 people have died.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah,
9 to 50.
not 200,000, 2,000. I'm sorry.
It's okay. But
However, there's only 3 million people in Iowa. So yeah.
That's not good.
So masks don't work 100%, but they work better than nothing. So we can debunk the idea that masks are useless. Masks are very useful. They're just not perfect.
No.
The other one is herd immunity. We discussed herd immunity in our previous episode. We discussed about vaccines. Herd immunity will protect a large group of people from suffering from a disease. If enough people are vaccinated, or in this case, because the coronavirus vaccine isn't really distributed yet, if enough people get coronavirus, that everybody who's susceptible to it has gotten it and has either died or recovered, then the ones that were left will have herd immunity. The question you have to ask yourself is, how many people have to die for that to happen?
I know. I feel like one's too many,
Well, no one wants to be in charge and making the ruling that says this many people have to die to protect, our economy.
Yeah.
Now, coronavirus is hovering at about 1% death rate.
Okay.
The 1918 Spanish flu, we also discussed in our previous episode, that had a 2% mortality rate. So it was twice as deadly as coronavirus.
Yeah.
When the Spanish flu struck in 1918, it killed like 675,000 people before it ran its course.
Oh my gosh.
So we're not at 675,000 yet. We're approaching 300,000 dead. So you can say, well, we're halfway to have herd immunity. But that would be a completely wrong thing to say, even though I've seen people say that on YouTube videos.
Oh my god.
There's a big difference between 1918 and now. The population of the United States is much, much larger than it was in 1918. Plus, in 1918, America was largely a rural country. More people lived on the farms than live on the cities.
Yeah.
Well, guess where people are living in the 21st century? Yeah. The amount of people who live in cities far outstrips the number of people who live on farms.
Yeah.
In 1918, it was actually pretty difficult for a disease to spread from one state to another. They didn't even have decent cars in 1918 to drive from one state to another.
Yeah.
Now it's different. And now the disease has spread much, much faster, and the population is much larger, and we're all living in extremely dangerous cities. Our death rate will be much, much higher than 675,000 if coronavirus is allowed to run its course unchecked. Statistically, we're looking at least 1 to 2 million people dead.
It feels like we've reached already a million. I feel
Not
like we've
yet.
reached it
We're
already.
heading there. We're heading there, though.
Oh
In the early days, right now, virtually every state has got some kind of rules on the books to try to limit the spread of the disease.
yeah.
When it first struck, though, there are people with a completely straight face who said, "Well, let people catch it. We'll get herd immunity eventually."
Really?
Yeah, people are saying that. Yeah,
Ugh. People disgust me.
yeah. America currently has 230 million people. So if 1% of that dies, that's yeah.
Oh my god.
People argue against like the lockdown that kept people in their homes. It
Yeah.
shut down businesses. No one wants businesses to suffer.
Yeah, no.
And no politician wants to pass a rule that makes businesses suffer. The problem is Sweden, the entire country, never locked down.
Yeah.
Now, they say that their intention wasn't to create herd immunity, but nevertheless, that's more or less what they tried to do and failed. Their disease rate was much higher than any other country in the area, and their economy still tanked. It did not help them at all. It just got more people sick. So officially, ignoring the problem does not make it better, and it does not make it go away. There's no easy way to do that.
No. It's not like a little kid that you can, if you just ignore it,
Yeah.
it goes.
Diseases aren't like that. Diseases spread and they linger. So herd immunity, we can debunk the idea that that's a good way of dealing with disease. That's a really last resort. We can't do anything else about it.
Yeah.
Way of dealing with disease.
I know. I feel like we still got a few more things we can try before we go to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there is a vaccine now. It'll take a while for the vaccine to be distributed. So the second most common conspiracy theory surrounding coronavirus is that there's something that's a miracle cure that they don't want you to know about, whoever they are. We've heard about hydrochloroquine, we've heard about ultraviolet light, we've heard about all kinds of things that supposedly can get rid of coronavirus. None of this is true. People want to believe so badly that there's one magic bullet out there that will cure it, that they keep clinging to this hope. And it's just not true. That's not how diseases work.
They're giving up their own hope.
Yeah. I mean, coronavirus, again, it's a brand new disease we know very little about. Influenza's been around forever.
Yeah.
And people still get the flu every single year because we still haven't found a way to actually cure the flu.
Yeah.
We can vaccinate against it to keep you from getting it, but we can't cure the flu. So the idea there's a miracle cure floating around out there that they're hiding from you, no.
Wouldn't you think that if they had a cure that would get rid of it completely, they would have already used it by now?
Yeah. Well, people say that people are holding on the cure, so they'll bring it out, and they'll become like billionaires by selling the cure to people. Now, there are vaccines now. The companies that made these vaccines might very well make a tidy profit off of them. But in a capitalistic society, we expect companies to make a profit.
Yeah.
Plus, there were hundreds of companies all over the world working on a vaccine. 2 companies in America and 1 company in England all have a version of a vaccine. So sitting on something when hundreds of other people are working on the exact same product is not a very smart business move.
Oh.
There's a theory going on that coronavirus actually doesn't exist.
I've heard that from people I personally know in life.
Yep, it's just not happening. It's all a huge lie. It's it's all a conspiracy. They want you to believe that coronavirus exists. It's a way of controlling you. If they get you to wear a mask today, well, they force you to tomorrow.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Oh yeah.
I gave
Now,
up.
the proponents of this theory include David Icke, whom we talked about a few weeks ago. David Icke is the one who, or Icke, I believe, is the one who believes that the world is secretly run by a race of ancient reptilians. So our reptilians overlords are trying to control us by creating this hoax about this deadly disease. Although Alex Jones of InfoWars has also signed on to this belief. So, and also QAnon, the QAnon people we've also discussed.
Oh my god.
Because you can't discuss one conspiracy without running into 10 others. They've also are pushing this.
They're all like intertwining.
They're all intertwined, yes. So basically, the theory is that the Satanist, baby-eating, pedophile reptilians are pretending there's a deadly disease to force us further under their control. They believe that every person who's been interviewed who says they have a loved one who's died are all actors who've been hired. Every Facebook post from doctors or nurses talking about the horrible situations, all completely faked. Every doctor who's been interviewed, every reporter who's written a story about it, all in on it. Hundreds of thousands of people in on it. People are trying to break into hospitals with cameras to film the patients. Yes, more than once. People have tried to kick down the doors of hospitals to get into the coronavirus wards to film them, to prove that the hospitals are really empty. Yeah, they get arrested and charged. Yeah, they get arrested and charged with trespassing. And they keep saying, if there's so many people dead, where are the bodies? Well, they're mostly buried at this point.
Yeah.
Basically, when was the last time you ever saw a dead body being filmed? You know,
Exactly.
go into YouTube. There aren't a lot of videos of dead bodies because they won't let you. Funeral homes won't let you film. Hospitals have never let you film in their intensive care ward. Partly because there's deadly diseases in there they don't want to expose you to.
Exactly. People don't understand that.
Yeah, they've never filmed any of these things, ever. And some people are upset all of a sudden that they're not filming people dying in the ICU unit. It's never been done, and it's never going to be done. No one's going to sign off on that.
Yeah.
So you can't, you can't get upset about that, even though people are. So right away, we know this conspiracy theory involves too many people. Far too many people have to agree to this theory and stick with their story and lie the same way every time. Every crisis actor, every doctor, every reporter has to work together on this, and the odds of that happening are like really impossible. And they're doing this apparently to gain more control over us, or possibly to destroy our economy. If that was the theory, then sadly they failed.
Yeah.
Apparently, over on Black Friday, Americans spent $5 billion. And on Cyber Monday, they spent like up to $40 billion.
Wow.
So, if it's trying to destroy our economy, it's failing.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's the largest like single shopping day ever was Black Monday of the coronavirus year. Yeah.
Is that it?
Oh, there's more.
There's more. Okay.
Oh yes, there's so much more. There is the theory that coronavirus is a man-made disease.
And with everyone you're telling me, I'm losing more and more hope in the world.
Okay, the thing with this one is the idea that it's a genetically engineered virus actually has some credence to it. Is the only one of the theories that actually has a tiny bit of substance.
Okay.
A little bit, tiny bit of substance. First of all, with our genetic engineering capabilities, we can make custom viruses.
Oh.
It's possible. And it came out of China. Now, we know China is kind of working on things like this. Every country on Earth pretends they're not working on biological weapons, but almost every country is, including America. Now, coronavirus was first spotted in Wuhan, where there just happens to be a virus research institute.
Oh.
So people started putting two and two together. Aha, so this is a virus created in this lab, which either accidentally escaped into the public, or it was deliberately spread by the Chinese.
Wow.
There's a lot of things wrong with this theory.
Yeah, definitely.
First of all, if you genetically engineer something, scientists can tell it's been tampered with. There's a certain way that evolution works. And as soon as coronavirus was identified, it was broken down, its genome was studied by hundreds of scientists all over the world. And every single one who looked at the genome said, this is exactly how diseases evolve. The Wuhan Viral Institute, the institute was put in Wuhan because they believed that would be a hotspot for the next virus. And it turns out they were right. It was literally put there because they thought there was likely to be a viral outbreak there in the future, and they'd be at the ground floor.
Oh my god.
And they were, but they still weren't ready for it.
Oh, but so.
The woman who runs the Wuhan lab was at a science conference somewhere else when the coronavirus outbreak occurred in China. And she's like, oh my God, I have to get back to my lab immediately. So she cancels her speaking engagements and tried to get a plane to China. And by that time, they're already shutting down flights to China. So the one person in the world who knew more about contagious viruses than anyone else was stuck in Europe for a while trying to get back to China desperately.
Oh my god.
And the very first thing she did was check that the virus couldn't have come from her lab. And she says that its genome is nothing like any of the viruses that she was working on. Now, we only really have her word on that, of course.
Yeah.
But every scientist who's looked at the genome agrees with her.
Mm-hmm.
She's made all of her work public. However, China is China, let's face it. When the virus first started, they instituted a lockdown so severe, they had the military patrolling the streets, who literally wouldn't let people leave their houses. And China believed they could actually stop the outbreak in China, in Wuhan itself, so it never spread beyond their shores, without telling anyone what was going on. So there was a period where China lied about it, even though people had already seen what was happening. They passed rules against doctors like tweeting about the ICUs filling up and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is a failed attempt to stop the coronavirus. It did spread beyond Wuhan pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody loves a scapegoat. You have to blame it on someone. There's a certain president who shall remain nameless,
Mm-hmm.
who referred to this several times as the China virus, because it was in fact first spotted in China. However, in China they have a different theory. There happened to be a athletic competition in China, in Wuhan,
Yeah.
in which American athletes participated. So China for a while is pushing the theory that Americans had brought the coronavirus to China and infected the Chinese people there. So in China for a while they called it the America virus,
Wow.
which shows you exactly how politicians think alike all over the world.
There's blame everyone.
There's blame everywhere.
Yeah.
So while it might have been possible that it could have been engineered by someone, the odds are it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
So far there's no sign that it was.
Wow.
There's a theory that certain people in positions of power want to be more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, you're familiar with Bill Gates?
Yeah.
Yes, Bill Gates is very famous. Unfortunately, Bill Gates is at the center of about a dozen conspiracy theories, of which coronavirus is only like one of them. It happened to be that 15 years ago, in a TED Talk,
Mm-hmm.
available on YouTube, Bill Gates talked about how America is extremely vulnerable for a pandemic.
Wow.
All the signs are there that we're not ready to deal with a massive disease outbreak if it happens. So because he predicted it would happen, he was like, of course he knew it would happen because he was planning it all along. It's all part of his cunning plan. Yes, he not only ran Microsoft, he also was planning on wiping out the world with a deadly disease. And to cover his tracks, he said it was going to happen in a TED Talk 15 years earlier. That's how cunning he is. Yeah. Now, never mind the fact that millions of people were also saying that a bad disease was coming soon. I've been reading articles about it for a long time now. Decades ago, people were already talking about it. No one knew what kind of disease it would be. Everybody knew a big disease was coming. That's why President Obama had the Pandemic Preparedness Center in the White House to get ready in case it happened under his watch. And in fact, Ebola struck under Obama's watch.
Yeah.
And his hand-picked medical team swung into action to take charge of that, and they were able to contain it.
Nice. Wow.
So many people all over the world were knowing that this was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Bill Gates, since he retired from Microsoft, has been spending a lot of his time with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They've been working on trying to fight childhood diseases.
Yeah.
And you fight childhood diseases in many ways, one of them by vaccination. Now, in our previous talk about vaccinations, I mentioned how in many places, third world countries, they don't have access to the medical care that we do.
Yeah.
It's very hard to get vaccines out there. It's also very expensive to get vaccines out there. Many of them have to be refrigerated. Some of them have to be frozen.
Yeah.
It's tricky. If you're in a country with no running water and no electricity, it's very hard to set up a state-of-the-art medical center. So Bill Gates, with his infinite amount of money, has been working on things like that. He's been vaccinating people all over the world. His foundation has been responsible for saving thousands, possibly millions of lives.
Which is amazing.
He's doing great work.
Yeah.
But people have pointed out, Bill Gates wants to vaccinate people all over the world, and the only way to stop coronavirus is to get vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
So the theory is it all fits together. He wants to get vaccinated, and now you have to get vaccinated. So why would Bill Gates want to vaccinate all these people? No, not for corona. Microchips.
Should
The
track us?
I'm sorry. I can't make this stuff up.
What?
Okay, there's a theory that you can use microchips to control people's minds. And under the cover of a vaccine, you can inject a microchip into someone that will not only allow them to be tracked by satellites everywhere they go, but to control their minds and force them to do things.
Oh my
Like
God.
buy Windows product, presumably. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Well, yeah. The theory is out there, man. It's very out there.
Oh.
There's several problems with it. For one thing, a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. Are you familiar with the ID chips you put in animals?
Yeah.
Now you
Yes.
can, in fact, take a needle and stick a microchip into an animal.
And if they ever like get loose or something, you
Yes.
can track them.
No, you can't.
Really?
You can't track them. That's the fallacy of it. You can't. The microchip isn't nearly powerful enough to track anyone.
Oh, I thought it was like if they get lost or like get. Oh.
No, it's not quite that good.
Now what's it for?
Well, what's for is if the dog is a stray and it's found and taken to a pound, there's a little wand you can wave over it that will pick up the information from the chip. But it only works at like half an inch away from the chip.
Oh.
The reason for that is the chip is the size of a grain of rice. It has no battery to broadcast anything. It literally can't broadcast a signal. So you have to wave a wand literally right next to the animal's skin.
Wow.
There's no way you can tell anything beyond that kind of distance. They're working on greater distances. Many people are working on that kind of thing, but no one has it yet. Even if they do have it, tracking someone with a satellite through something that's so small it's practically invisible is going to be, it seems pretty impossible from a physics standpoint. People who are microchip experts say you'd have to hook up a battery roughly the size of a cell phone battery, to broadcast a signal to be picked up by a satellite, because that's what satellites do. You can be tracked anywhere you go by your cell phone. Do you know that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it amazes me that people who are worried about being microchipped and tracked by Bill Gates walk around with a cell phone every day of their lives.
I know.
They can already be tracked by their cell phone. Why would they have to microchip you too?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Plus, bearing in mind that Bill Gates is mostly vaccinating people in third world countries, what's the exact advantage of him knowing where every kid in Indonesia, is at any given time?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem really plausible. It's not a good plan for world domination. It's just not. So far as the idea that you can use microchips to control people, there are chips that you can implant in people's brains that have an effect on them. Interfacing with the brain is still something that's still in the future.
Yeah.
It's something they're working on, but it's still decades or centuries away from actually functioning, and it may never function.
Mm-hmm.
But the same rule applies. To be properly effective, it has to have a strong power source to operate.
Yeah.
And a tiny microchip doesn't have any real power source to it. Your computer is full of microchips. You still have to plug it into the wall to make it work. The laptop has a battery with a limited shelf life, and your battery for your laptop is this big.
Yeah.
It involves a technology that doesn't exist yet. So right away, that's a big flaw in the theory. Plus, the microchips they use, or the needles they use to put a chip into a dog or a cat, is actually really huge. It's several times the size of the tiny needle you get a vaccine from.
And a vaccine's like a pinpoint kind of.
Yes, the one they put into animals is the size of a grain of rice.
Yeah.
You know how big a grain of rice is?
Yeah.
So imagine a needle with that diameter, slightly wider than that.
Yeah.
That's a big needle. That's bigger than what they use for vaccines. It's bigger than what they use for body piercing.
I feel like that would like leave a hole in your skin.
You'll know if you got poked with that kind of needle, you definitely know about it. And you can't pretend it's just a vaccine needle.
Mm-hmm.
Every shot you've ever gotten, You can picture what the needle looked like in your head.
Yeah.
A grain of rice will not fit through that, will it?
No.
Yeah, and that's the size of the microchips that we're talking about for purposes of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just doesn't work. Now, the other reason is, okay, so he's not using it for mind control. I like to use like the Lex Luthor method.
Okay.
If someone believes that a billionaire, like megalomaniac, wants to conquer the world, I always compare him to Lex Luthor.
Okay.
Yeah. So injecting microchips to conquer the world, even Lex Luthor wouldn't fall for that one. The other thing is, you can take over the world by limiting the population. Now, it's true that every problem the world faces will be better if we had less population on the Earth.
Yeah.
Global warming would disappear, starvation would disappear, diseases would be down if we had a few billion less people.
Mm-hmm.
But to do that, you need a really, really super powerful disease. And coronavirus ain't it. It has literally a 1% death rate. That's terrible. Yeah, it's less than any other pandemic disease that we've had. It's literally half what the Spanish flu was, and that was in 1918.
Yeah.
So if Bill Gates paid a lot of money to have some secret lab build that for him, he should definitely demand his money back immediately.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, none of these theories hold water even slightly, but many people all over the internet believe them. And there's no convincing some people.
No, I think you just kind of have to let them think whatever they want. And then.
However, these people are the kind of people who refuse to get vaccinated. They won't take the coronavirus vaccine when it comes around. And unless enough people take it, it will never go away. You have to get vaccinated.
And I hate wearing the mask, so can you guys please get vaccinated?
Yes, the faster you get vaccinated, the more we can go back to normal. Everybody wants it to go back to normal. There's not a single human being in the world who is enjoying this, trust me. But, yeah, you have to take the vaccine. You have to take precautions to control it. Otherwise, it won't be controlled. It's a pandemic. People can't wrap their heads around the idea of how serious the situation is.
I know, crazy.
So those are the top coronavirus myths, and I usually found websites with the top 20 coronavirus myths and the top 50 coronavirus myths. I only picked like the first 8.
Oh my gosh. People.
Yeah.
It's real. Wear masks. Hand sanitizer 6
Yes.
feet away.
Absolutely. Take every precaution that you can to protect yourself and everybody else.
Yeah.
You have a duty to protect people. There's vulnerable people all over in our society. Everyone knows someone who can't get a vaccine. Everyone knows someone who's elderly.
Yeah.
My wife has asthma.
Yeah.
She wouldn't survive a coronavirus attack.
No.
I've got diabetes, which also puts me on the danger list.
Yeah, I know, definitely.
Yeah.
I know people with really weak immune systems.
Yeah. People who have any kind of autoimmune disease, there's a lot of them out there.
Yeah.
People who have radiation treatments for cancer
Yeah.
are extremely vulnerable. So because the people in our society who can't protect themselves, you need to do it for you. It's your duty. It's your patriotic duty as an American.
Definitely. My gosh.
Any final thoughts?
I don't know. I lost all hope in everyone.
Oh, I don't make you cynical like me. I'm an old man. I can afford to be cynical. You're young.
Too late, Ed. You turn me just like you. Oh my gosh. Please, guys. Just don't make it a joke. Just it is a serious topic, and it is it is a dangerous thing. So make sure you do what is told. If we have a lockdown again, like they're talking about,
Yeah, it could
stay
happen.
inside, wear the masks. Do whatever you have to do to make sure that the people you love in your life and the other people that we love in our lives, are all safe. So.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gabby.
Thank you. Poetic. I know. I try.
All right, that has been it for this episode of Book Talking. Thank you for listening. I have been Ed.
And I'm Miss Gabby.
We'll see you next time, and be safe.